The funny thing about my career is from the beginning, it wasn't what I expected. I am a planner by nature, and so I don't like to necessarily deviate from my plan. But one of the things that I learned and continue to learn is having a plan is great, but always be open to new possibilities and new opportunities.
You were at Target, then you went to Mercedes and Nike. Tell me about those transitions, how you made those happen.
Back to those relationships. So,
Yeah. And then now you're at ARM. How did you get there?
Back to relationships again.
Wow. You are a good people person.
An equation that I think has served me well throughout my life, I call it PRO. So performance plus relationships equals opportunity. You have to be great at what you do. Not just good, but great. Going up and beyond, really delivering, driving impact. That's what makes you memorable for people in terms of making things happen.
People talk about, is the MBA worth it? Is the MBA dead? What's your opinion?
Is it worth it? I think has to be defined by the individual. But if you look at it holistically, the answer to me would absolutely be yes.
I'm excited to talk today with Tamika Curry-Smith. She's the Senior VP and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at ARM, which is the world's leading semiconductor IP company. She has a long and diverse career, including founder of a DEI consulting company, faculty at Michigan Ross, VP of Global D&I at Nike, and roles at Mercedes, Target, and Deloitte. She was recently named one of Savoy's 300 most influential executives in corporate America. She earned her MBA at Kellogg and her BBA at Ross, and she is a longtime friend. Please join me in welcoming Tamika Curry-Smith.
Thanks so much, Sujan. I am looking forward to our conversation and appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Terrific. Well, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
And I want to go way back to when you were in college. What was your first job out of college? What was that like?
Yeah, so at Ross, which is where I went undergrad, I majored in accounting. And so when I graduated, I joined, back then it was Deloitte & Touche, now just known as Deloitte. And in their auditing practice, I had actually interned with Deloitte the summer before and decided to join there full-time after graduation. And so that first summer, I remember, was just, you're kind of in a daze getting used to what it was like in corporate America and meeting new people and learning the business. And on top of all that, I was also studying for the CPA exam because that was one of my goals and something that was really important to me. So it was a really busy time that first year. And to top it all off, within my first year, I actually transferred from the accounting and auditing practice to the management consulting arm of Deloitte. Completely unexpectedly. I remember getting a call out of the blue one day. Essentially, Deloitte had sold some new work and they needed people right away. It was in October, so it was like off recruiting cycles, and so they couldn't go to campuses and hire more people. So the consulting group came to the accounting group and said, hey, do you have anybody that might be interested in coming over? And I was one of the people that was identified and went through the process and ended up making the switch. So the funny thing about my career is from the beginning, it wasn't what I expected because I thought I would be doing accounting and auditing. And within 6 months, I was doing management consulting.
And what did you think about that switch? Are you glad that it happened, or any regrets?
No regrets. In fact, you'll see this as we talk, but there is a theme throughout my career of people seeing something in me that I didn't see myself, or I would just say kind of the universe conspiring in my favor. And so I was always like, math was my favorite subject, always very quantitative minded. And so accounting made sense. But admittedly, anyone who knows me also knows I'm a pretty outgoing person. I love to be around people. And so one of the things that I'll be honest that I felt a little odd about in accounting is that I wasn't always around people who were extroverts and very social minded and people minded. And that changed when I went into management consulting. I mean, you got to still do all of the quantitative things, which I really loved and I was good at. And I got to do it in teams and meeting with clients, and like kind of the bedrock of the work was through partnership and work and collaboration. So I felt like it brought together the things that I really enjoyed more than just strictly accounting.
So you were kind of in the right place at the right time to do something different. It
Yes.
wasn't something that you were looking for.
I mean, it's one of those things, and when we go through my career path, you'll see that happens a lot, where I was at the right place at the right time. And, one of my important lessons learned in life is to just be open.
Yeah.
I am a planner by nature, and so I don't like to necessarily deviate from my plan, but one of the things that I learned and continue to learn is having a plan is great, but always be open to new possibilities and new opportunities.
Absolutely, because at any age, you can't know what else is out there that you might be really good at or really excited to do, or even better, both.
Yeah, because listen, people are in rooms that we don't know about. People have roles that we don't know about. People are in situations where they could use our help and our expertise, and we just may not know about them. And so to just be able to have an open mind, to know what you're good at. So I think knowing yourself is really key to this, is know yourself, know what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not. And then that allows you to pivot when opportunities come your way.
Absolutely. So you already had a BBA. Mm-hmm. You were working in consulting. What motivated you to go on and get an MBA on top of that?
Yeah. So, this is a key example of the importance of exposure. So I'm a first generation college graduate in my family. And so, to be honest, I heard about an MBA, but I didn't know anyone in my family that had an MBA, or in my family circles, to be honest. But at Deloitte, what I joined when I transferred from accounting to management consulting was their analyst program. And as a part of their analyst program, they actually expected the analysts to go back and get their MBAs. It was just kind of a condition of the role. And they had a whole system and structure set up for it. And so, like, what motivated me was Deloitte, just basically setting that expectation. And then what that did is exposed me to a new world of learning about it. Like, what is an MBA and why would I want to get it? And what are the valuable points of it? And what could it do for me in my career? And interestingly enough, the program was like really, really structured, and most people left after 2 years and went back to school and got their MBAs. But I didn't think I was ready after 2 years. I felt like, I think given my background and, working in corporate America was just very new to me and to my family. I was like, I want to learn more. I want to do more. And so I stayed another year, and I mean, that was my choice, and one that was a little bit unusual at the time, because I felt like I just needed to learn more and do more before I went back and got my MBA. So the exposure was important, but back to knowing yourself, for me, I wanted to do it when it made sense for me.
So how many years did you work before starting your MBA?
3 years.
And then how did you decide which MBA program to go to?
Well, Deloitte did an amazing job. They had this program called the MBA Symposium, and they brought in all of the top MBA schools and sent all the analysts there. So it was like they curated everything for us, which was really nice. And so you got to first get exposed to all of the schools then. But back to knowing yourself, for me, I said, okay, now I've met all the schools. Let me learn more about them. So I really took some time to research kind of the ethos of the school, the teaching methodology, what the culture of each of the schools was like. And then I kind of narrowed it down to a handful of schools that I visited. And then I only applied to 2 schools, actually.
Oh, wow.
And then I was crossing my fingers that I would get into them. And I did. And then I ended up choosing Kellogg.
So how was that MBA experience? You probably had a picture of what an MBA experience would look like from having worked with other consultants at Deloitte and who had been through an MBA program. Did it meet your expectations, or was it wildly different?
I mean, it's one of those situations where you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I thought I knew. I had talked to people who did have their MBA. That was kind of a part of the due diligence I did. But there's nothing like actually being in the setting yourself. And so, one of the things that I really loved about getting my MBA was being able to actually apply the things that I had learned in those 3 years at Deloitte. Even the philosophy of the courses was application, was case-based, was more experiential, was, simulations and things of that sort. Whereas undergrad was very kind of, repetition and lecturing and, recitation and memorization. Getting an MBA was much more action-based, and I loved that, and I felt like it brought together what I learned undergrad, what I had done at Deloitte, and then what I was learning getting my MBA. So I truly enjoyed it. I felt like it was a nice next step for me in my learning and career journey.
Did you face any challenges while you were in business school?
I think there's always the challenges of time management. You have these courses, you're trying to meet people and have fun. You're in a city, and I was in Chicago, one of my absolute favorite cities, so you want to enjoy that and have life. Your family's away because I'm from Detroit, and so my family and my friends were in another state. And so I would say the hardest thing was trying to find time to do all the things that were really important to me and then also excel in school, because anyone who knows me knows I'm a total type A person. Like, I want to get all A's if I can. But I also know that, life is about more than that. So it was tough, but I'm also, as I said before, a planner. So how did I get through it? Lots of scheduling, lots of communication, planning overload, and some nights that I probably didn't get as much sleep as I should have, but you make it through. So
what are the most valuable lessons or experiences you had during the MBA that you apply to your career today?
I would say probably the number one thing that just got solidified for me was the importance of relationships. I think back, actually this year is my 25-year reunion at Kellogg, so I'll be headed there in a few weeks. And I'm still friends with many of the people that I met there. I'm still friends with many of the people I met at Michigan as well, which will be 30 years next year. And so just the importance of those relationships and friendships, that they are the things that get you through life, through the ups and downs, after you graduate and you're beyond the workforce and the career stuff. It's that personal network that allows you to really live a fulfilled life. I would say what I also learned is, you heard me say before that I'm a really kind of quantitatively focused person, but I intentionally chose to make organizational behavior one of my majors in grad school at Kellogg, and partially because one of the things that I had seen during my years consulting is that, like, we could have the best ideas, the really well laid plans, implementation strategies. We had it all figured out as consultants. But then you had to go and work with the client to implement the work and make sure it stuck, and to, drive the change management in the organization. And that was way harder than, having the plan. And so I wanted to learn more around human behavior, what drives and motivates us, how do you inspire people, how do you drive change. And so one of the things that I would say I've learned is that we can't lean on one or the other too much. You have to have this really important mix of strategy and plans, but also plans fail or succeed through people. And so understanding the importance of people and how you really get change to stick is critically important.
Yeah, managing those relationships, managing the communications, because it all happens through people, for people. It's not just moving widgets.
Exactly.
So, 100%. So, you graduated from Kellogg. Where did you go next?
Right back to Deloitte. Part of that analyst program, we were incented to come back. So Back then
It's hard to walk away from.
Yeah, it's hard. Back then, I don't know if they even still do this, but back then, Deloitte paid for you to go to get your MBA. And then you had kind of an obligation to them on the back end. I called it the work release program, jokingly. And so you came back and you kind of worked off and they prorated the amount that they paid. So I did want to come back, though. It wasn't just the financial piece that brought me back, but I truly had enjoyed my time at Deloitte. I once again, I felt like Deloitte was a great company in that good at what they did, but the people were also good people. You being one of the people that I met at Deloitte. And so, so for me, it wasn't just the financial part that brought me back. I truly enjoyed the work and I enjoyed the people. And I was looking forward to kind of bringing what I had learned to bear in a different way in terms of managing teams, doing more strategic work, working with more partners and more senior level people at the clients. And so that was really what it was more like after graduation.
How long did you stay?
I stayed another 4 years after I got my MBA. Yeah.
Longer than your work release program required.
Longer than my work release program. Yes, absolutely. So, and that's how I knew it wasn't just about that. But you're right. I don't know that I had a plan in mind other than, to work that time off. And the reason I left was, once again, one of those things I didn't plan. And so Deloitte, actually, whenever people ask me about my time there, I was there almost 10 years in total. It was one of the, I think, best choices I could have made. The foundation that it laid for me, the standard of excellence that it created, the way that it helped me learn how to problem solve, how to analyze, how to collaborate and work in teams. It has been invaluable throughout my career. So I'm very grateful for my time there.
And then what made you leave?
So back to those, people talking about you in spaces that you don't know about. And this is, I probably need to preface this with a little bit of another career pivot, but while I was still at Deloitte. So I had been there about 8 years at this point. And I got a call out of the blue one day asking me if I wanted to leave client service and go into, back then it was just the D, be the head of diversity for North and South America for the firm. And at first I was like completely flabbergasted. Like, why me? I don't have a people or HR background. I wasn't even doing human capital consulting. I was in the strategy and operations practice. But once again, I had been true to myself that whole time. And so, this is back in the 90s, mid to late 90s. And there weren't a lot of women. There weren't a lot of people of color. There weren't a lot of people from underrepresented backgrounds in accounting or management consulting. And so I was always, asking about that, asking where were we recruiting and what were we doing to diversify the pool of people that joined the firm. I was volunteering to help. So I joined the recruiting team to go back to Michigan. I volunteered to be on the interview slate when, people would come into the office, or to be buddies of new hires. So I was just really personally invested in changing the situation. And people saw that, and unbeknownst to me, had kind of been talking about that behind the scenes. And so that's what led to them approaching me about it. And in addition to that, they said, listen, you've been here a long time. You've built great relationships. The partners and the other leaders know you. And so what better person to kind of still be able to talk the language, but to really build a bridge to help them understand why these things are important and what they can do and how we can improve as a firm. And so knowing that the leadership had the confidence in me and felt like I was the right person, like, really made me feel good about them approaching me. I negotiated that, if I don't like it, can I go back into client service? And they said yes. But I've been doing this work ever since, and this is year 23 that I've been doing what is now known as diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So fast forward to why did I leave Deloitte? I got approached out of the blue about an opportunity at Target. This was back in 2004, and they were looking for their first diversity leader. And
wow.
back to relationships, a colleague who I had worked with at Deloitte had left like 2 years earlier and happened to be having lunch with the executive recruiter who was trying to fill the role at Target. And she told them about me and said, this is who you need to talk to. And next thing I knew, I was getting a call from the recruiter. And shortly thereafter, I decided to make the switch and to leave Deloitte and go to Target.
Wow. So I would point to a couple things that made you successful in all of these positions that seem to have landed in your lap, but they didn't really. Yeah. You were very good at your job, and you were very good at relationships. And so people knew how good you were and liked working with you. And so when people thought of who should we tap to do these roles, they thought of you. Would that be a good encapsulation of what someone else could do to be successful in their career? Be good and make good relationships.
Absolutely. So funny enough, I have a latent book that I have started to write that talks about this, and it's an equation that I think has served me well throughout my life, and it's just what you described. I call it PRO. So performance plus relationships equals opportunity. And that absolutely is it. Is you have to be great at what you do. And that's what I said back before about that standard of excellence. And not just good, but great. Going above and beyond, really delivering, driving impact. That's what makes you memorable for people in terms of making things happen.
Right.
And building those relationships, not, disingenuous relationships, but truly getting to know people, letting them get to know you, being yourself, and, going out of your way to just get to know people. And once again, I feel like I got that reputation, not only for the relationships, but then like raising your hand and saying, I'm just not going to complain, but I'm going to be part of the solution. How can I help make this better? And so you combine those two things, and then it does create these opportunities that, like I said before, you may not know about, you may not have been even exposed to, but you become top of mind to people when those opportunities surface.
Absolutely. The two other things that I heard you say were be a problem solver and be a hand raiser. Put those things together and people will know you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So going back to the MBA, how do you feel like it has impacted your career trajectory?
I mean, I think that I've often thought, what if I didn't go back? Where would I be today? And obviously you'll never know. But I also know what changed when I did go back. The first is the obvious immediate salary bump. So if I just compared like what I was making at Deloitte pre-MBA and what I made at Deloitte post-MBA, dramatically different just from getting the MBA. And so, as we know, when you look at what people earn over the course of their career, women in particular, people of color, people from underrepresented groups, there's a pay gap. And so I think, one of the great ways that enabled me to kind of get into that upper echelon of earning capacity was getting the MBA. So I think, financially, you can't underestimate the impact and what that does for you. And then once again, as I reflect on my trajectory since then, having the MBA creates and automatically puts you in another level, another pay grade when, companies are looking at what you bring to the table. So like part of it is absolutely financial. The other part is the skills that I've learned. I mean, I use between my MBA and my BBA, I use the things that I learned every day in the workforce. And, whether it's thinking about operations and process and how that works, or the financial and the accounting component, or the organizational behavior side, or the marketing side, the fact that I have, at least a baseline level of all of those things allows me to step into conversations with any leader, which, in my role, I'm oftentimes meeting with other C-suite leaders or other functional experts, and based upon their, level of expertise. And I can speak the language. I can talk to them. I can relate. I can ask them questions. And so to me, it's just been and valuable to give me the knowledge, the expertise, the language, the vernacular, and the confidence to go into these rooms and these spaces and to know that I can add value. So to me, it's just been absolutely invaluable. I do say, I feel confident in myself and my abilities. I would have been successful without it. But boy, do I think it's certainly helped and taken me to new heights.
Totally agree. So every year, people talk about, is the MBA worth it? Is the MBA dead? What's your opinion?
I think it's absolutely worth it. But I think that we have to have a mindset of investing in ourselves. And so, if you're doing it strictly for the financial things that I said before, I guess you could do some kind of analysis and see, does it pay off in the long run? But for me, it's, as I mentioned, it was much more than that. It was the friendships and relationships. It was the knowledge that I learned. It was the network that it has opened up. It is the doors that it has allowed me to step into that I probably wouldn't have been able to without it. It is an immediate credentializer oftentimes, when you step into spaces. And so I think there are also many intangible things and outside of just strictly the financial component. So what is it worth it? I think has to be defined by the individual. But if you look at it holistically, the answer to me would absolutely be yes.
I totally agree. I think the industry often focuses on the quantitative aspects. What's the ROI? Do you get back the tuition in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? It's not just that. It is a lifetime of opportunities that become available because you have it. The people you know because you have it. The people who will talk to you because you have it. And you can't quantify those, but those are absolutely career builders and opportunity makers.
Absolutely. And, and as I talk about career pivots and how many of those pivots have happened, or even now, what allows me to navigate in certain spaces, or if I'm wondering about something, the fact that I could literally shoot an email to someone at Kellogg and say, I'm looking to do this, or my company is interested in this. To your point, you can't put a price tag on it because there are all of these other things that you get in return. Like I said, I think the ROI is obvious.
Yes. So tell me about a struggle or a failure that you've had in your career and how you got over it and what you learned from it.
Yeah. So, I'll go back to my days at Deloitte because this was one of probably the most impactful struggles that I've had in terms of how it shaped me since. So even though it happened a long time ago, it has once again informed my career. So one of the good things about being in consulting is your work is project based. So you're oftentimes tied to, a partner will say, hey, Tamika, I want you to join this project with me. And then you join a team and you're there for, it depends on how long. It could be a couple months. It could be a couple years, depending on what the project is. But the great thing about that is that you get the opportunity to see a lot of different things, to work with a lot of different people, to understand different clients, to work with different teams. And so you're never kind of in, let's say you do have a bad manager, because it's consulting and you're kind of rotating to new roles and new projects, you usually don't have a bad manager for too long. But I did have a bad manager in this one experience. And it was a manager who was a micromanager. It was very kind of odd because a micromanager on the one hand, meaning constantly, what are you doing? What are you doing? But then didn't provide guidance, didn't provide feedback, didn't kind of shape me or invest in me or try to develop me. And so it was a really stressful time. I dreaded going to work every day. I didn't feel like I was learning or growing or contributing. And all those things are really important to me as a person. And certainly professionally, those are things that you want. And so, I was just trying to figure out what I could do. So how did I get out of it? At first, I tried to talk to other people that knew this person and what did you learn and how did you work with them? So I tried to fix it on my own, which is natural and it's also part of my personality, but I still couldn't fix it. So it taught me two things. One is that it's okay to ask for help sometimes. And so I did. I called an audible And back to those relationships I had, I reached out to another partner in confidence, and I said, I need you to get me out of this project. And I had worked with that other partner a couple times before, had done great work. Once again, he knew I could perform. We had a good relationship. And I just told him, like, I will do whatever. Like, whatever it takes, just get me out. And the project that I was working on was, like, only partially billable. And in consulting, billable hours take precedence. And so this other partner was able to pull me onto a billable project and get me out of that situation. And in a situation where I could go back and contribute and thrive. And so, you know, not only did it teach me to ask for help and that you can't always navigate things on your own, but the number one thing it taught me is what kind of manager not to be. Because I vowed that I would never want anyone to experience what I experienced. And so I took all of those lessons learned and poured them into myself and my own management style and leadership style. And made sure that anyone who ever reported to me, that I went above and beyond to not be a micromanager, to give them guidance and direction, to make them know I cared and that their development and their career mattered to me, to go to bat for them and to be their advocate. All those things that I didn't get, I am so intentional about giving to my team now. So once again, I think everything we go through in life is meant to teach us something and to shape us, and that certainly did.
You made a tough situation better and learned something from it coming out of it and became a better manager and leader as a result of it.
Yep, absolutely.
What are your superpowers?
So I would say I still have that like quantitative superpower. So, I mean, I'm a great pivot table person in Excel. You know, I can do math in my head. As I mentioned, math was always my favorite subject. So I have a 13-year-old son, and I'm always, you know, like when he comes to me for help, I'm still able to do a lot of that stuff in my head. So that quantitative side is always there, even though I'm not using it necessarily every day now and doing DEI work. So that's there. I am an empath, meaning that I truly feed off of and vibe off of people's energy and their feelings, and sometimes I wish I could turn it off, but I really can't. And so you'll find me like crying at the drop of a dime because I just can feel and sense someone's pain or their sadness, or if I, you know, can feel them struggling. So I'm very empathetic, and I would even say emotional, but like in a compassionate way. But then I also am very practical. It's this odd mix, because I then try to take that empathy and that caring and like say, okay, what are we going to do now? And so I don't allow people to kind of wallow in their sorrows, or if they're going through a tough time, I'm there and I'm going to listen, and they always know they can come to me, and then we're going to be like, okay, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do about it? And so it's this kind of interesting combination that I think has helped me probably build these relationships that I built over time, because as I mentioned, I'm people focused, but also results driven too.
Yes, I love that. People are lucky to know you, to be able to be their authentic selves with you, and then to get that advice and guidance and action orientation to help get them out of the place that they're stuck in. Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I want to go back to, you were at Target, then you went to Mercedes and Nike. Mm-hmm. Tell me about those transitions, how you made those happen, and what kind of advice you might have for people who are looking to move from one organization to another.
Mm-hmm. Back to those relationships. So,
yeah.
So how I found
served you well.
I mean, they've served me extremely well. So how I got to even know about the opportunity at Mercedes was once again through those relationships that I talked about earlier. So at the time, Mercedes had moved their headquarters from New Jersey to Atlanta, and I had moved to Atlanta. So I was in Atlanta for about a year at this time, just learning and meeting new people and kind of getting my legs under me. And so I started doing some kind of public speaking engagements with different organizations. At the time, I had my own business and was doing DI consulting. And one of the organizations that I was kind of doing speaking with and kind of leaning into, I got to know their manager of all of the events. And she had subsequently left that organization and gone to Mercedes. So she called me out of the blue one day and said, I have the perfect job for you. It hasn't even been posted yet, but I think like this would be amazing for you. And so that's how I first got on my radar. And then what I was really intrigued about the role is that this shift that the company was making, half of the people had not moved from New Jersey to Atlanta. And so they needed to like staff up really quickly. They needed to, really get grounded in the community in Atlanta and make their brand known. I mean, obviously people know Mercedes, but in the Atlanta area, they needed to be a part of the corporate community. And so it felt like it was a really great time to join the brand and to be able to make an impact given my experience, which is really what I did. And then how did I get to Nike? So while I was at Mercedes, one of my peers, so Mercedes had different divisions. They had the financial services division, which finances the vehicles. I was in the actual car side that sold the cars. And then there was a truck side as well. And all three of those parts of the business had DEI leaders. And so I got to know them. Well, the DEI leader in the truck side of the business knew the recruiter at Nike who was recruiting for the role and said, they need you. They need you. You could have such an impact there. You would be amazing. And long story short, that's how I ended up getting the Nike role. So
interesting. Why did your colleagues say you instead of raising their hand for that job?
Well, I had more experience in DEI. As I mentioned, at this point, I had been doing, so I got into DEI in 2001. And what I, to your point, appreciated about this person is she wasn't trying to hoard the opportunity for herself. She really was like, who would be best for this job? And it's a VP level role. She was like, I'm not really VP level. And so you immediately came to mind. So, but then the next thing she wanted is for, can you get me in after you're in? Which I subsequently did. So,
she was smart.
That's right. She was smart. That's right. But I mean, it was genuine, and she's obviously very good at what she does, or else I wouldn't have brought her on. But
yeah,
back to relationships, and like you said, genuine, authentic relationships where people know that I'm always going to have their best interests at heart and do what's right. And I think that really is what that was about and why she came to me.
And then now you're at ARM. They recently IPO'd, which is exciting.
It's very
How did
exciting.
You get there?
Back to relationships again.
Wow. You are a good people person.
My whole career, I tell you, I will sing the praises of my equation of pro, because it is truly the story of my career. So I had left Nike and had gone back to do consulting for myself, which, even that story is just really interesting to me, and one that I feel is important to touch on. When I think about lessons that I've learned throughout my career, is I think we have to give ourselves permission to change and to adapt, and first and foremost, to be introspective. And so I create these opportunities to be introspective every year. And so they're usually at the end of the year, around the holidays, before I go into the new year. And I usually do like a mid-year one too. And so I always ask myself, like, are you still enjoying what you're doing? Are you happy? Are you thriving? Are you learning? Are you growing? Like all those kinds of things. And I also feel, for me, that work-life balance is really important. And I mentioned earlier, I have a son. And throughout his years of growing up, I've intentionally gone in and out of the corporate space when I felt like I needed to lean in and really be there for him. And so, part of that time was me being introspective and saying, I feel like I need to make a change. And the change was more about the fact that I do DEI work because I want to have an impact and make a difference in people's lives and in organizations. And it's hard to do that in very large organizations and very old organizations. And when I think about the places that I had been previously, the Deloittes, the Targets, the Mercedes, and Nikes, very, big global organizations. Once again, Mercedes over 100 years old, wonderful brands. And I had tremendous experiences there. But I thought, like, if you really want to drive impact, particularly in this space, in the DEI space, why don't you think about, like, going into organizations sooner? Go into earlier stage companies, go into smaller companies, so that as they grow and as they scale, one of the things we say in the DEI space is we want it to be a part of a company's DNA. Well, it's hard to make it a part of the DNA 120 years later, right? But if I truly embed it early on, it can be a part of the DNA as the company grows and scales. So I intentionally started consulting with like startups and doing work with earlier stage companies. So that was kind of an intentional career pivot I had made, and smaller companies. So that was already kind of my intention going into it. Add on the relationship. So one of the consulting firms that I had used both at Nike and at Target was working with ARM at the time. And ARM at the time did not have a DEI leader, but they were looking for one. And so they asked the consulting firm, do you know anyone that might be interested? The consulting firm called me up, and here I am at ARM.
What is your secret to having all these relationships, to maintaining them and being top of mind? Besides the performance part, that I know you have down. But what are you doing in your relationships that makes you so memorable and top of mind for people when they have opportunities?
So I am intentional. Probably I would even say obsessive about relationships. And once again, it's come out of a not so positive reason, but I've lost both of my parents. So they both passed away pretty young. They were both 63, 5 years apart. So before I even turned 40, I had lost both of my parents. And although I was always a relationship-driven person before then, I think it really put it into hyperdrive for me, because what it drilled home is that kind of that cliche phrase of tomorrow's not promised. I mean, I knew that firsthand, having lost both of my parents. So I am obsessive about keeping in touch with people. And so sometimes I will just send a text. Sometimes it's a call. Sometimes it's an email. And when I'm thinking about it, I do it. And it is, if you were to ask people honestly, what is Tamika known for? They would tell you, I don't know how she does it. Like, Tamika knows everybody, and Tamika keeps in touch with everybody. And so I don't do it. Once again, I don't do it to get something from it. I just think about the people, the memories I've had, the times I've had, and I want to make sure I maintain those relationships. And so I would say the answer is I am so intentional and I am so purposeful. It's almost like I schedule it and or I make it a part of my routine. That's probably the better analogy. It's part of my routine to reach out to people and to do it on a regular cadence.
And look at us. We've been friends since 1999.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, lightning round.
Okay.
What's a favorite book, podcast, or TV show?
I won't say of all time, but one that I'm really enjoying now is Atomic Habits. It's a book.
James Clear.
Yes, absolutely. And back to that, like, quantitative plus understanding, like, how does the human mind work and how do you drive change? One of my friends and colleagues mentioned it to me, and it is so good at really understanding, like, what is the science behind building habits that will stick, and, like, kind of the positive and negative reinforcement that happens in our minds, and how we build the rigor, or what I call kind of building the muscle of habits. So I'm really enjoying that. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm really enjoying that and looking forward to putting the principles into practice, because I think, once again, we're all busy. We have a lot on our plates, But how do we make time for the things that are really important? I think you've got to build that habit for it.
Absolutely. And I love that he talks about the incremental changes, how exponentially it can impact your life.
Yeah, it's like compound interest almost, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What's a fun fact or something surprising about you?
Fun fact about me, for those that haven't met me, you know this obviously, but I am what I like to say vertically challenged. So I'm 4'11".
You and me both.
4'11", and so it's so funny because most kids catch up to me around 12, 13. So now I'm looking up at my son, which I really don't like. But it is what it is. It's really funny because I don't realize how short I am sometimes until I see myself in pictures with other people. And then I'm like,
I'm the same way.
Oh my goodness, you're really short.
I know. Sometimes people will say, you look like a totally different species.
People call me fun size, like the
Yeah,
candy bars.
Yep. That's a nice way to put it. Mm-hmm. What's something new that you're trying to learn?
So I am trying to learn Spanish right now. I took French in high school and college. And I know a little bit of Spanish, enough to kind of say hi and bye and, order some food. But my son speaks Spanish. That's his language that he's been taking in school. He's really good at it. And we are going to Spain and Italy this summer for his 8th grade graduation trip. And so I told him that I would try to learn some more Spanish so that I could actually have more conversations and do more than just saying, hola and adios.
How are you trying to learn it? Are you using Babbel or
I use Duolingo, and it's going really well. Duolingo kind of gamifies it and gives you the diamonds for the more that you do it, and so so I'm trying to do that. We'll see how it goes. He's actually really good, and I told him, why don't we start talking more, because I think that'll help me too, as if we maybe try to have some conversations together. So we'll see.
Yeah, the daily practice definitely makes things language easiver.
For sure.
If you could go back and give your 20-year-old self advice, what would it be?
So I hit on a couple. Well, one of these for sure, but I think it bears repeating, is to be open and flexible. So have a plan. You should have a plan, but always be open to the possibilities. And I tell people that I could not have and did not plan my career per what we've discussed this whole time. And so, but wow, what a career has it been, and one that is much better than anything that I could have planned, because I just didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so, back to know yourself, know the things that drive you, have a plan, but be open and flexible would be one. Next would be believe in yourself and know your worth, even when other people are questioning it. I think we've all probably had moments in our career, whether it's imposter syndrome or you're just going through a tough time and you're thinking am I ready for this? Can I do this? And, whether it's affirmations or meditations or whatever it is that you need to do, just knowing that you are more than capable. What I tell myself is that any room that I am in, I have earned the right to be there. And it's kind of a mantra that I share with myself, and it helps me get through those tough moments. And then, once again, the third would be never underestimate the power of relationships. It's been the secret sauce for me throughout my career and life.
That's great advice. So speaking of advice, what advice would you give to someone who's considering an MBA now?
Yeah, I would say do your due diligence. I think the thing for me that made a big difference is all the schools are not the same. They have very different approaches to learning. They have very different cultures. What it feels like being there is very different. Their expertise in certain areas varies. And so going back to knowing yourself and knowing why are you getting the MBA and what do you want to get out of it, starting with the end in mind, I think will help you do that research and that investigation, talk to people, understand what their experiences were like. Like, this is going to be a big investment, back to that investment in yourself, financially and of your time. And so you want to make sure that it pays off. And I would say, like, don't just rely on the rankings. What is on paper is not what your experience will necessarily be like. And so, you have to go beyond what the written publications say and go on site and visit. I know for me, one of the schools that I applied to, when I went to visit, I was like, this doesn't feel right to me. And so I think you can only know that if you put yourself in that situation. And so I would just say, like, do the due diligence and put in the effort. You're making a big investment. And so, do the upfront work. And once you do that, make it work for you. Like, make it the springboard to the next chapter of your career and ultimately your life, because I think that's really what it can be.
And you certainly jumped off of that springboard and made a really tremendous career with a lot of zigs and zags and interesting rides along the journey.
Yes, for sure. But it's been a wild ride, but one that I wouldn't trade for anything.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with me, Tamika, and sharing all of your pearls of wisdom and your journey and your pro model. I love that. Totally subscribe to that. And I wish you all the best in your role at ARM.
Thank you, Sujin. It's always great to spend time with you and catch up, and I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.